seen body and language as something that arises from nothing. And technocratic rationality, and that you actually have to leave the university or the academy to be a public intellectual, in a sense that I talked about, Said was talking about. But there are resources here which you can draw on, but it does institutionalize you in the worst sense of the word. And so I think there's nothing to bring together. That's what I meant at the beginning. I don't know if it exists. I don't know if there's in fact a public out there with the way the mass media is organized in the spaces, that there's actually such a space. I think where it's going to come from, going to emerge, I don't know. Maybe it will emerge in sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe it'll come in, in around Istanbul. I don't know. Maybe it's in Shanghai. I don't know where it's going to emerge. But my own sense is that we are really kind of at the nadir of this kind of concept, and what would emerge we can't even really predict. We're projecting images from past waves of historical development onto the future, and we don't know. But at this point, I would say you're going to be sadly disappointed if you came to university to think a lot and have a lot of time to think, and you'll have even less becoming a professor. And so I don't know if that's what Macri, her sense of the struggle with, just aside from the public intellectual side, just being an intellectual. We're projecting images. Moving to areas that you are not an expert. The notion of a professional is what maybe the academic has become, or maybe you could call a co-opted intellectual. I think the other difficulty is, speaking to Ali's point, is a question of language. One is, my own presentation was based on a model for dealing with truth. I don't care where it comes from. I just came across it. I thought it was a pretty good one. That's my responsibility to articulate it. Whether it develops a public for me is not my concern. I don't know. I can't predict that. We can't make intellectuals happen. We don't choose them to happen. We don't select out, say, well, these 5 people, they should become our leading intellectuals. That isn't the dynamic of it. But what they do seem to represent is a way of speaking the truth in that mechanism. And I think in that mechanism that they do that, there are a set of procedures we can identify. And that is a different kind of model than identifying the general politics of who's emerging as an intellectual. I didn't cite Badiou because he is a public intellectual. He is that. But I didn't cite him because he's a public intellectual. I didn't really care who I cited. It just so happens that Badiou has been recently translated in English, and I can read him. So I don't know if it's my responsibility to highlight other people in other languages which I don't speak or not the recognition, or if they're not speaking to me as a terms of truth, as I see it. And I could be wrong, they could be wrong. So I think that the general dynamic is that there is not something that's selected out on its own, that we can kind of determine ahead of time that there are going to be 4 people here and they're all going to look like this, and they're going to be from this age group, and they're going to be from this parts of the world, to determine who speaks the truth and who takes on that mantle. I think we can name a list of people and start to debate that difference of who they are. But I would also argue that they do fit the paradigm that Badiou is talking about in terms of their capacity to collect conditional truths based on local situations that have a resonance, and to bring them together. And in fact, what I saw Ali Abdi doing by that discussion was the voice of an intellectual speaking in an academic institution with another intellectual. I can accept that. But it's not about the people. Let's not confuse ourselves. That's no more about the people than what I was saying. It's about the people. That's a different kind of debate. I think what is the nature of an intellectual is a very complex one, but it has its own social dynamic that goes beyond our kind of selecting out particular characteristics that they should. At some point, they do emerge from the public. They become a star of sorts in that sense. But there are other forms of public performance, which is about the rock star. And I would say that most of the public performances are non-intellectual. They are an attempt to fuse a particular stratum of person with the masses, either for profit, for public demagoguery, for whatever it is. It might be, and it usually is very artistic, poetic, mystical. In that sense, those aren't public intellectuals. Those are public mystics, public demagogues, public artists, but they're all performing in the public. So that's why I went to my discussion on truth and the defense of big T truth, because I think that is a very distinguishing characteristic. And if they don't have that, then their performance in public is something else. And that's fine. There are lots of other performances that can go in public. Is a kind of intervention that makes public space. I think it's our understanding. Public spaces don't exist for us to kind of move into and mobilize. They are created, they are made, and that's what defines an event. An example would be yesterday in Turkey, which I've been doing some work in. There were mass demonstrations right across the country. Public sector strike, illegal public sector strike, police route. It was successful. In that way, there are certain people linked and leading those groups and thinking about how to organize and put those people together and trying to put together a great big picture. I would say there is the making of the public. That's in those acts. They, in a sense, took the space and created an event. And it's this fidelity to that event to recreate that continues both the creation of the public and the public intellectual. I think they emerge together dialectically. They don't emerge separately, one leading the other. They come together and they make history.